So you might be wondering to yourself, Mark, why are you telling me earthquake stories when I just want to know about some family stuff? It's as far back as I can go with documentation, and then it gets really confusing before that because our family was down in Tennessee, and they were in the area where the earthquake happened. And they were living among the Cherokee. That's as far as I know so far. And James Brown, the guy that ends up coming here, watched the end of the world. He watched his own apocalypse. He watched the destruction of the land and the people that he loved, and there was absolutely nothing he could do about it. And I'm also quite positive that he was a half-breed of some kind, but he wasn't white enough to be white, and he wasn't Indian enough to be Indian. So he and his brother John ended up coming up north. John went to Illinois, and James stayed here in Indiana. But I find it really odd that James decided to settle right on the Fortville Fault. The most interesting thing is that earthquake was predicted. If you go back to the Cherokee, I mean, there's a lot of Indian history, and I'm not getting into all of that right now, but this is going to be about the Cherokee. So there was a leader named DraggingCanoe. He was one of the younger chiefs. He did not want to sign peace treaties anymore because the whites were not keeping the treaties, and it had just been, treaty after treaty and more land loss. So there was a large conference in 1785 on Sycamore Shoals on the Watauga River in what is now Tennessee, far east Tennessee. And DraggingCanoe was very upset, and he and a bunch of other young warriors got up and left the council because they didn't want to be part of the treaty, and they swore that they would bring war. And that was the origin of what they call the Chickamauga, or the Chickamauga Cherokee. The Chickamauga, so DraggingCanoe knew that the Indians would have to unite together if they were going to defeat this force, if they were going to have any chance of saving their land, their culture, their lives, their kids, their way of life. They would have to unite. And early American Indian history is not nearly as sweet and in love with nature as we think. I mean, there was a lot of warfare. There's a lot of things that were going on. There were Indians that were capturing other Indians to be slaves. It was an ugly time just to be a human. Race has little to do with it. One of the tribes that DraggingCanoe approached was up north, and the leader of that tribe was an Indian by the name of Tecumseh. Tecumseh was a great warrior. I don't remember if he was Delaware or Miami. I'm doing this from my head. Tecumseh, big deal. Tecumseh was, when he was born, there was a comet, or I think it was a comet or like a huge shooting star, and his name became that. And it was shortly before, it was 2 weeks before the earthquake happened, that there was another prophesied sign that you would see in the sky. I'm getting ahead of myself. DraggingCanoe tries to unite the tribes. He's not able to. He dies after dancing too hard, celebrating a treaty with one tribe. Tecumseh was one of 40 Indians that were from the plains that were down with the Chickamauga, and they wanted to fight the whites. They were allied with the British for the War of 1812. I can't go back to the Revolutionary War, but I have tied people in my family to the regulator movement in North Carolina, maybe South Carolina, and that, another fascinating story. So Tecumseh has a brother called the Prophet, and you have to understand that all Indians did not understand what was going on. Whether it's the Great White Spirit they believed in or whatever, they were losing everything, and liquor became a huge problem. The Indians lost their lifestyle. They started relying too much on imported goods. They wanted, all the things that the English had, and they didn't value the things that they had, and so it turned their entire society upside down. Might be some similarities to that situation today. So I think it's around 1805, Tecumseh's brother, who was called the Prophet, I guess he got good and liquored up, and he had a vision. And the vision was that the tribes would unite, that Tecumseh would lead them, that there would be a sign. The first sign was a lunar eclipse, which white people did not know how to calculate here in Indiana, but apparently he did. So he used that as a sign. Our governor at the time was William Henry Harrison. He was he was the shortest lived president. He made it 44 days. So the prophet comes up with this thing that the Indians need to unite, and they need to return to their traditional values. They have been punished because they gave up the values that they'd had all their lives. And so I believe this is where the ghost dance comes in. And the Indians would dance in these circles. I think they have like animal skin things, and it was a prayer to, I think, kind of like rid the land of white people, and to bring back the animals, to bring back their way of life, all of that, because it wasn't pretty. I mean, they didn't have protection against smallpox and all of the other stuff that we brought, that all the immigrants that came from Europe brought. So Tecumseh and the prophet, they start going around and they start having a few battles and skirmishes here and there, especially in Indiana, up in Michigan around Fort Detroit, down around Vincennes, Indiana, which is an old French outpost from the Louisiana Purchase. So Tecumseh and the prophet have this vision, and what they say is that Tecumseh has a bunch of red sticks, bundles of red sticks. And what he does is he goes on a trip. He leaves the prophet in Indiana, and he goes down south so that he can get the tribes to align with him. The Chickamauga, the Cherokee, and Cherokee's a really nebulous term by then because they had been so decimated that Catawba and other Indian tribes were in with them. Each stack of these red sticks that what's-his-face had? Each stack of red sticks that Tecumseh had with him, he would take to these Indian councils, and he would sit down with the leaders of the tribe, and they would talk about what to do, where to go, how to succeed, how to unite. Can they unite? Do we fight? Do we not? And every place that he went, Tecumseh left the bundle of red sticks. And he said, I want you to break and burn one stick each night. And so some of them did. There was one group of people that didn't. They were, I think, in northern Alabama. The tribe escapes me right now, but maybe the Creek. So he goes to try to get them to fight. They don't want to fight. He gets mad, upset. He says, I'm going to walk to Detroit. And when I get to the gates, I'm going to stomp my feet and your houses will fall down. So this is December. This is November. And so the Indians calculated based on their stuff that it would be a 40-day trip. And it was the morning of the 40th day that the New Madrid earthquake happened. And that I think the Fortville fault happened. And how Fortville had oil and gas. And it may have had something to do with how James Brown ended up here.